All right, it is Tuesday night. We're back after a week off because, well, somebody had to do a fantasy football draft. But another episode of Goal Horns and Fight Songs, and tonight we have Tom Harden back on with us, ASU fan. Even though he had a little heartbreak in the college football season, this was it this weekend? I can't even remember when I messaged you.
It was this weekend. Yeah, we're turning the page. I'm on from that. We're on to next week.
Thanks, Bill Belichick.
All right, so we're getting closer and closer to the season. About what, 3.5 weeks away here?
It's less than 30 days.
Uh,
Not that I'm counting or anything.
no, I mean it's definitely getting close, and I cannot wait. The weather's getting cooler. Football has already annoyed me to a point where I don't want to watch it anymore. I'm ready for hockey.
Well,
But
and you have more reason to be excited now for hockey season. Specifically, when I messaged you earlier, I was like, "What are we going to talk about?" And you brought up a specific topic.
well, it's kind of a topic that relates to all three of us in this room. As at one point or another, this player was associated with all of us. Mike has actually gotten to see him suit up for his team, though. He was loosely associated with Tom's team, and now he is registered and on the roster for Western Michigan, that being Cole Spicer. Played 2 years with Duluth before going back to the USHL. Kind of had a tentative agreement with Arizona State, which I'm hoping Tom can kind of fill us in on a little bit. And then it was announced last week that he was suited up and on the roster here at Western Michigan. So bouncing around a little bit. Kind of had some disappointing seasons, hoping to get it back. And Western has appeared to be one of those places where that's certainly possible with the coaching staff that they have and what we've seen from other guys who have moved around a few places before settling here and revamping their careers. So excited to have him here and can't wait to see what he looks like in the brown and gold.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can start here. Cole was he was one of those players that we were hoping we were going to build around, kind of like we have with our core now with the Plants and Shagabe. He was one of those up and comers, and it's some good seasons. He was part of our offense, and we're not a team that scores a lot in general. You look at the national championship teams, from my recollection, they could score, but the games weren't going to be blowouts for those reasons. And I think he was brought in to do that. And then all of a sudden decided, and it was one of those years where we lost a lot of guys. I think that might have been Biondi had both his shoulders done that year and just kind of tanked the program for a couple of years. Went back to the USHL and then on to Tom.
I think he also had some eligibility issues in Duluth too. So
I think so. Well, hard to do when you're in the Great White North. Nothing else to do.
I know academic eligibility was an issue for him. That's why he only played half of that second season in Duluth.
Yeah, and then I think injuries were also starting to kind of creep up. I think he got hurt while he was back at the USHL, and that was part of what led to the departure from Arizona State. At least that was kind of what they made it seem like. I don't know if he wasn't coming along as much as Arizona State had hoped, or as far as he had hoped. I know there was like a concussion issue that he was dealing with.
It's a little bit of a mix of both. There was the injury concern with his concussions. That's also why he wasn't at Bruins development camp over the summer. But it boils down to the academics as well. I've been hearing some whisperings that part of the proposed deal for him to play at ASU would have been a tutor to make sure he was in line with the schoolwork. And knowing Greg Powers, that's not something that he's going to stand for. Forget about dealing with the academic clearinghouse and making sure that you are barely above the required grades to play. Like, he wants all of his players to be exceeding expectations. Like, I'm just going to throw it out here. He's going to want all of his guys at least at a at a 3.0 grade point average. He's not going to settle for somebody who is just barely scraping by and, you know, dragging down the team GPA. If there's even the slightest possibility that there's going to be disruption, he's not going to stand for it. So it's a very powers thing of us to move on from Spicer. You know, he is undeniably one hell of an offensive player. I've heard quotes that he is dumb as a box of rocks, but he is absolutely the guy that you want running your offense.
I mean, I guess like to some degree, like we have to remember that there are educational institutions being represented here, and that has to be something that the teams themselves take pride in, and the universities, it should still mean something that there is an education to be gained here. And we do hear like a lot that, like, athletes get it a little easier. They have a few more advantages than the average student, whatever the case may be. But the point is, like, everyone wants to say it's student athlete, and the student part is just as important as the athletic part. But there's definitely times and situations where we know that that's not 100% true. But to some, and Mike and I have kind of talked about this before. If you're not going to put at least some degree of importance on the education, then why even call it college sports anymore? Like, are we going to get to a point where essentially a kid is taking classes, for example, at ASU, but he actually plays hockey for Denver? Like, we're just going to throw everything out the window because we don't care enough about the representation of the institutions here, and they're just essentially pro athletes at a lower rank, which we're kind of getting close to with the amount of jumping in and out of the portal and NIL money being talked about in hundreds and thousands of dollars and things like that. So I respect that he wants to keep the educational part there.
And I think one of the things is more recently that student part of the student athlete has, well, I should say, up until the last couple of years, the student part of the student athlete had become more prevalent because in the morning show I listened to, Mark Parrish, he goes, I went to St. Cloud State. I majored in hockey. I don't know shit about anything. I barely went to class. Like, I majored in hockey. Now that's St. Cloud State, but you look at just all the programs for college hockey around the country, they're known for some sort of academics for the most part. You have all the Ivy League schools, you have Army, you have Air Force. They're highly academically motivated schools.
The Boston schools also.
Yeah, especially the Northeast. North Dakota, they have a huge aviation program. UMD, my brother was an engineer at UMD. A lot of these programs in CC, liberal arts, Denver, they're focused on academics, but also being good at hockey. They're not just trying to be in Alabama and Michigan and Ohio State, where if you're an athlete and you're on one of these bigger programs, screw it, whatever, we don't care. Michigan Tech is another one with their engineering program, and you look at John Scott. He was an engineer, and he was doing his homework on his bus rides. Like, it doesn't make a difference. But now, like Wes said, with the NIL money, even though it's creeping into hockey, it's not so much. A lot of these schools, they're just like, yeah, you're a pro athlete, you're gonna make it, and percentages, I don't think they really do so hot for those kids, and they need that education.
Yeah, I mean, the odds of making the pro rank, the highest levels of hockey are significantly smaller than just getting to the pros at all. But with all the avenues that exist, so it's a benefit to have that in your back pocket. And I don't know, there's also something about like guys going from playing hockey to becoming real estate agents or existing in the real estate space. I know there's quite a few former Western guys who are all in that space, and as I follow them, their housing listings pop up, or their businesses that they've begun to create post hockey have entered their feeds and become what they're promoting. So yeah, I mean, it's still important though, and it's up to the university to stress the importance of that and not just be a place that lets that take a back seat, because if it takes a back seat in your athletic department, eventually it's going to trickle out and it's going to take a back seat in all of your education departments. And the big name on the diploma is going to mean a lot less than the little name in the middle of it, because companies are going to start being like, oh, well, that school is just where you go to party or where you go to do this or that, and it starts meaning a little bit less across the board.
Yeah. And like you said, the term is still student athlete, so that's what it boils down at the end of the day.
And I think, you know, Tom and I both kind of went to schools that have a little bit of a party reputation to them.
A little bit.
Just a touch.
Yeah. So, I mean, they call, you know, Western's got a pretty solid nickname that the university tries to steer people away from when answering questions about it, but it's still out there, and it's still just as prevalent as it was 20 years ago when I was a freshman.
Well, don't let Michael Crow hear you talking about ASU's party culture.
Oh, and even my school, UMD, they're a dry campus. My school, we were a wet campus. Athletics, it all depended on the program. The hockey team, you had a bunch of 21-year-olds coming down from Canada that had played juniors all their, like, through their eligibility. They're coming down, they're partying in the freshman dorms. And the school was like, hey, do this, but the coaching staff let them do it. So kind of bringing it back to powers and saying, hey, if you're not keeping up on your academics, we're not going to have you.
And that's the thing too, is like, you have to look at the players now probably have a lot more pressure on them than players did in the past too. Like, you have the academic pressure, you've got the pressure of the NIL stuff, but you've also got everybody in the world with a cell phone trying to record every party that you're ever at. And the second that you slip up, it's spread throughout campus, and probably 3 schools over know that you messed up or did something stupid. And so I think that's the advantage of the hockey team, really, is that these guys are a little bit older when they get to college, and they've had some experience of living on their own to some degree, or at least not at home with mom and dad. You know, some of them had billet families or have traveled for hockey to an extent where they're not straight at home for 12 months out of the year. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of maturity that seems to come, and you hope that shows up in all facets: school, off the ice, whether it's in the classroom or just, you know, making smart decisions when you are hanging out with the boys and doing things as a group that's not playing hockey or in class.
I think Division 1, not Division 3. Division 1, they have a little better opportunity.
Well, and just speaking to the standard that's set by Coach Powers, you know, 16 players on our roster last year were named NCHC Academic All Conference. 12 of our guys were NCHC Distinguished Scholar Athletes. So that bar is high, and if, you know, he's not gonna stand for anything less than that.
Yeah, and there's probably quite a few more extra eyes on ASU as their first year in the conference, and everyone wanted to know what they were about. Maybe not so much classroom wise, but I know that you guys definitely seem to live up to the hype the first year on the ice. Now, whether that was taking teams by surprise, and we'll see how this year goes, and it goes going forward, but competed in and out every weekend. You know, you guys were the first team to knock off Denver, who was on a 12-0 run at that point. The only team to give Western a regulation loss in the conference. So some big wins to hang your hat on your first year in the NCHC, and finish second, and had almost every opportunity to be that number 1 team, but Western just decided that it was their year to win as many trophies as they could, and took home 3 out of the 4 they played for.
Well, I tell you, nobody's going to be taking us for granted this year. We're no longer flying under the radar. We've got that target.
Yeah, the only thing that really, like, I wonder about ASU, and the thing about the NCHC, is goaltending drives the teams at the top of the conference. If you have a lot of turnover in your net, you're gonna struggle. Really, the only team that doesn't fit that mold is, unfortunately, Miami, because they had Ludwig Persson, but they had nothing around him for whatever reason. So they struggled even with one of the better goalies in the league. But Omaha, they have a strong goaltender in his name is literally just left my brain.
Simon Lacosi.
Yeah, Lacosi. Jesus.
I just was looking to let you struggle.
That's okay. My brain just white-lighted. Like Cozy, he's strong in net, and it's helped Omaha be a team in the top half of the conference every year he's been there. And Berko coming off a little bit of a struggle year, but has solidified the Colorado College net. Denver's going to have to move, or they're moving on from Matt Davis, who graduated, so there could be a little bit of unknown there in net there. St. Cloud State, we saw the importance of a goalie there when Posh was injured in that middle of the season, and it derailed anything they had going. Western Michigan, we know that Cam Rose gone and played extremely well last year, but Hampton also played extremely well last year and down the stretch. And as a freshman, won pretty much everything. It was on a team that won everything that they were going for. He had a couple gold medals, three big college trophies. That dude filled up a career's worth of a trophy room in a single season.
Hopefully he's got a couple extra shelves.
Yeah, got to find get another storage unit or something to keep piling in.
Maybe Marvin Windows can just divert some of the shelf for him.
Right. But North Dakota, they're again trying to go back to the portal and hope for something in a goalie wise. A goalie coming from ASU who played extremely well last year in Gibson Homer, and you guys are totally revamping your goalie room.
Yeah, well, this is the second straight year of the Tempe to North Dakota goalie pipeline after we saw TJ Septenfelter go up for last season, and I loved Homer. I loved everything that he gave us. He struggled a little bit here and there. I think that speaks more to, just the way Greg Powers coaches the goalies, being a former goalie himself, and didn't hurt that we got a spectacular season out of Luke Pavicic as well. But yeah, we are going all in on revamping our goalie room. Third new starting goalie in the last 3 years. We've got Connor Hasley coming over from Bentley, and honestly, I love what he brings. I saw his numbers from Bentley last year. Say what you will about Atlantic hockey being a little bit lower competition, but leading the nation with 11 shutouts, really, you can't argue with that all that much. And then, we've got Samuel Urban coming in as a freshman. He will absolutely, learn from Hasley, learn from his experience, and hopefully that's going to set him up well to take over as a sophomore next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's again, it's going to be interesting to see which goalies show up and show out. That we know the NCHC is known for their goaltenders. It's a conference that's hard on goalies, but if they can show up and show out, they're going to end up getting pro contracts somewhere.
Well, and like you were saying, say what you want about Bentley, you said it perfectly. You're still leading in shutouts, and just back to person, just because your team sucks in front of you doesn't mean you're not a good goaltender.
Right.
So that's a big thing that you can bring to a team.
I mean, let's also not forget that Hasley kept Bentley in the game for 57.5 minutes against Boston College.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, if there's a reason you're getting a shutout. I mean, you could face 20 goals a night and get a shutout. You could face 5 goals a night and get a shutout, and you kind of want to do the 5 more than the 20. But at the end of the day, you still got to make all the saves where the puck is in front of you, because we've seen some games. I have seen some games where a goalie was playing extremely well and maybe just a little bit of terrible puck luck. Like, I don't know, maybe a puck off the glass behind them and over the net and behind the shoulders, and it's in the net, and the team has a little life that they shouldn't have.
2015 National Championship, Matt O'Connor comes to mind.
Mike knows the game I'm referring to.
Mm-hmm.
I
was there.
Maybe there's a weird game where the first 10 minutes are who knows what of hockey, and it's a 3-3 game and 10 minutes in. But anything can happen on the ice. So to have 11 shutouts, it speaks to his ability to maintain focus and play in each and every one of those games and be there for 60 minutes. Because the goalie is the only guy who's got to be on the ice for 60 minutes, or as close to it as possible. You might pull him at the end if you're down one, but or you get a couple delayed penalties here and there. But for the most part, he's the only guy on the team that's touching ice the whole game.
Yeah, and then to keep going with the goalies in our schools, us with Guyon now with Knapp having left, he's going to be the number one guy, and it'll be interesting to see if he can take that next step, because he showed flashes last year, but there was also a lot of moments where he was a freshman goalie, and you could tell he was a freshman goalie where he just wasn't controlling the puck. There would be shots that he could control the rebound and he just wouldn't, and there would be second, third opportunities. But I think he can make that next step moving forward. I think there's going to be a lot of good goalie play in the conference this year. Like there usually is, but I think even more so now this year.
Yeah, and Duluth is another one of those spots who showed how important the goalie room was. I mean, you guys went on that run of 4 straight like solid goaltenders, and it wasn't until the last couple of years that you haven't had that same level of goaltending that you were used to. But and then the last couple of years you've lost that leadership on the offensive side. But I think you guys are in a pretty good spot with the guys you got, the young guys you got. Brad even kind of mentioned it. As they get more experience, they're going to take over, and it's going to be a different Duluth team. Really, what kept you guys out of 8th place was just the goaltender fall off in St. Cloud.
Yeah, it really did. And I think, unfortunately, if Stayskal didn't have his cancer diagnosis, he was in line to be that next goalie after Miska and Kaskisuo and Shepard, like those guys. But then he had that most of the year off, and he lost a little bit, and you can't blame the kid for any of that. And then we had to bring in Thiessen and I don't know whoever the hell else we had. It wasn't great. It wasn't great. But now I think with Guyon being in net, he's going to reestablish that goaltender pedigree that we've had. And yeah, those young guys, a lot of Minnesota kids. I think Sandy he always has, but he's really been leaning in, especially Hermantown, because they're right up the road. And they've been so dominant. He's bringing in a lot of good kids.
And Delmar will be a solid backup as well. He had a rough situation in Miami last season, but I think playing in a better system, he'll definitely have a bounce back season this year.
With the firing of Barry in Duluth,
we called it, by the way.
We did say his seat was hot. There was also a lot of North Dakota fans clamoring for it. So, to be fair, we were kind of reading the writing on the wall, or at least speculating on the writing on the wall.
Yeah, but we got shut down by Brad. So
yeah. Does Sandlin's seat warm up a little bit this year, or does the improvement we saw at the end of last season and the hope that will continue to improve into this season put a little bit of that, maybe there's a couple less coals under his seat?
I think it's all going to depend. And we've talked about this at length in many episodes. He has a lot longer leash than most coaches will, because he is so long in the tooth. I do think it's going to start heating up, though, if we're not competing for that 4th or 5th spot, if we're not right at least in the middle of the pack. I think it gets better. That's at least my hope, because those young guys like the Plants and the Shagabays, they have that 1 year under their belt. They're a little bit more confident. They're going to start winning more games. But if it starts to go a little pear-shaped, I think there's going to be a conversation of saying, you know what, we appreciate everything you've done. You just might not have it anymore. As much as we respect you, we love you as our coach. You brought us national championships. The seat's going to get a little hot if they don't perform, I think, almost right out of the gate, at least in my opinion.
Well, his contract runs through the end of next season, right?
I don't know. I haven't paid attention to that.
I think if that's the case, depending on how this season goes, maybe it turns into a rather than a firing, more of a mutually agreed to part ways situation, just out of respect.
Yeah,
I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna say, regardless, you're fired. It's just gonna be, yeah, we talked about it. Kind of figured he wants to retire. We can give him a little early retirement. We agreed that way. It's going to be a way more respectful thing than, yeah, you sucked. Get out of here.
Okay, so it's closer to the Barry situation than I originally considered it to be, because this year would have been his last contract year, I think. And they decided to not extend him, which usually, within the last couple of years of your contract, you're working towards an extension if there's going to be one. And they just decided to not even let him have that final year. So I think they went a year early as far as ending the contract with Barry. So this could be a year where they make that decision whether they're going to extend him or maybe next year. Maybe they announce that next year's his last year, kind of like they did. I think it was more of his choice to retire, but the Ferris State coach who retired at the end of last season, a big number of coaches who have retired in the last couple of years, and Sandlin. Not that I think his hockey IQ is still right there. I think his coaching ability is still right there. But I think he's mentioned mentally that it's not the league that he came into. It's not the type of hockey he came into as a coach. It's not necessarily where he saw college hockey going. And I think some of that could be weighing on his mind, and that being the NIL stuff, the transfer portal stuff, the CHLs, all the rule changes we've seen in the last 5 years that all these coaches are adjusting to. I don't know that he was in favor of some of them. And so that could be something he's also considering if it were a mutual parting of ways. And I think another situation where the coach could potentially be on a hot seat is St. Cloud State. I think they've kind of had some concerns with their head coach as well. At least it's kind of been the rumblings that I've seen here and there.
You're right with the NIL and the way just college sports in general are going. There, you see a lot of big name coaches just stepping down and saying, "This isn't what we signed up for. This is not that." But then I think for Sandy, there's part of him finding the right assistant coaches and that recruiting. Now, yeah, he is getting good recruiting classes coming in, but you look at the assistant coaches he's lost, and Brett Larson, and I think was it Herder that left. Yeah, he lost some very, very good assistant coaches to different programs, and it's tough to replace them because if you find something that works and then you don't have that, how do you replace that? And it's a whole process, and he's done it for so long. That might be why he also didn't. He interviewed but wouldn't take a pro coaching job, because what college sports is turning into and college athletics, he doesn't want to deal with that. He just wants to recruit kids, build his team the way he wants to build it. Don't have to worry about paying kids money, trying to steal away some top recruit based off of money, like the purity of it. He might just say, "I'm done. Forget it. Do one more year and get out."
Well, to your point about the whole NIL thing with regards to coaches, 4 of the new coaches we've seen come in this year are under 40 years old. Zach McKelvey, 30, Brett Riley, 33, Brendan Riley, 29, and even though he's interim as of right now, Joe Howe at Yale is 35. we're seeing this youth movement in college hockey coaching, and I think that bodes well for being able to better embrace the changing landscape when it comes to NIL, the transfer portal, and CHL eligibility.
And even Carl is super young at Denver.
30,
Yeah, Carl's 35.
Yeah, 35, 36.
I
So
mean,
they
I'm
can
looking at it.
relate to it better.
I'm looking at the list of head coaches right now. 7 active head coaches are under the age of 40, and then you've also got Garrett Raboin and Brendan Naruto, who are both exactly 40. So 9 coaches 40 or under of the 63 coaches across NCAA.
And look at when Carl took over. I mean, he was even he might have been under 30. He's already,
yeah, he was.
Yeah,
because he's already been
Yeah,
at Denver for, and he was even. I mean, he almost went straight from college to assistant coach at Denver because he had the injuries that prevented his playing career from going further.
Yeah,
Yeah,
his first season as a head coach was 2018-19. He was he was going on 29 when he started as head coach.
Yeah,
because after their national championship in 2017,
Montgomery
that's
went to
when.
the pros.
hmm
So
Yeah, I think Montgomery was there one more year, and then Carl stepped in.
So yeah, I mean, he's another guy, and he's had great success with what he's been able to sustain at Denver and get guys to the pros and reload and mix in there. First kind of seems to be an outlier as kind of an older guy who's been able to inject a little bit of youth to the team, and maybe that was just because we were going from Andy Murray, who was definitely an older style coach, an older guy himself, and to Ferschweiler, who's a little bit younger, not quite as young as others, but not as old as some too. So he's kind of that middle ground, and he was coming straight from the NHL and brought in a different way of coaching and trying to really instill that pro style and be one of those guys who's like, look, you're here to do this. We understand that, but at the same time, we can't overdo things and overtrain in any certain way. And even pro guys have a little bit of attention time limits that we need to work with, and you might have a similar thing. So let's be cognizant of that, and we're going to coach how you could be coached in the pros and how you should be coached in the pros, so that when you get there, it's less of a transition.
Well, being in a room with Fersch, he's one of the older coaches, but he definitely brings an energy that feels 10 years younger than he actually is, and listening to him talk, he's a coach that I would want to play for.
I think it all depends because Sandlin's been in coaching, I think, longer than Motzko. But you look at what Motzko did in St. Cloud and how he built that program up. And then he came to Minnesota and they were terrible. They were not good. Fans weren't going to the building, anything like that. And how he's built that program up, it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Tom, about first in being younger, or at least thinking they're younger. I think that's Motzko's mentality as opposed to Sandlin's. Sandlin's more that crusty old vet, where Motzko, he embraces the youth and the energy and the changing environment that there is. And look at how many superstars that or potential superstars, I should say, superstars in college hockey, but potential superstars in the NHL they produced over the last couple of years. Brock Faber is one of them. I would consider him at least a star. He was under Motzko. Snuggerud's another one. Matthew Nyes. There's so many players that he's produced out of Minnesota, but he's embraced that change and he has that youthful energy, even though he's got to be in his 60s.
I think oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Motzko's 64.
That's what I figured.
But even one of his more recent interviews, like Fersch basically said, like, look, this is the way it is. We can either adapt now or we can adapt later. And the teams who adapt now are going to be a little bit more successful than the ones who try and resist and fight and try to do things the old way. So, and I think it's shown. Like I said, I mean, look at the guys who have come through Western through the transfer portal and have had great success. Sam Colangelo, he thought his career was kind of not in a good spot at Northeastern, had some success there, but not what he was hoping for. Comes into Western, has an incredible senior season and a really solid back half of that year itself. Goes to the team that had already drafted him, the Ducks, and gets to play the last few pro games of the season there, and spent time back and forth between the Seagulls or the Gulls and the Ducks in San Diego this season. Tim Washi fought his entire career at Western Michigan and earned the right to play with the Ducks last year, and signed an extension, so he's staying in the Anaheim organization. Robbie Drasner had a hell of a time playing in Miami for 4 years, and comes to Western and was really a solid dude on the blue line, and helped give some of the younger guys confidence in their game, and really solidified a blue line that had struggled the last couple of years. Him and Kramer both came in and were solid veteran guys who brought that veteran presence, and I think it's really because of them that Western got as far as it did, and really improved that defense that, like I said, had struggled a few years. And even Rowe, yeah, Cam, he had a really good year his first year in the Big Ten at Wisconsin. His second year was kind of, whether it was a butting of heads with the coach or just the sophomore slump, but there was a disagreement there, and he decided to take his talents elsewhere. Western had a pretty much an open net with the leaving of Brandon Bussey to the pros, and everybody else deciding to dip out with the coaching change, and came in, solidified himself in net for 2 seasons, instantly became a fan favorite of the Lunatics, and played really, really good hockey. Had some of the worst puck luck I've ever seen for a goalie, but I think even he would say that he kind of revamped his career, and then was another guy who was a veteran presence and had no problem taking a step back and letting Hampton have a piece of the net, and then the net to himself at the end of the year. And First tells a great story about them, and go find it somewhere else because it's not my story to tell. So I think Cam even kind of mentioned it when he was on with us that he was the first guy to kind of reach out to Hampton. So if you want to hear that story, you can either look back at our conversation with Cam or any of the interviews that Coach Frischweiler did at the beginning of last year, or any time that Hampton and Cam were brought up, because he's mentioned it a few times. But like I said, not my story to tell. So I go seek it out because I won't tell it right, and I won't do it justice. So I won't even try. But yeah, so just another guy that I think was it Whitelaw, who's on his third school in 3 years. Started at Wisconsin, went to Michigan, now he's at Western. I think the coaching staff could potentially do something big for him. He's expected to be an offensive guy. Cole Spicer is expected to provide a little bit of juice. Also, this is the first time this is the most scoring that Western's returning under Coach Frischweiler in the 4 years that he's been the head coach. After having to find a way to replace 70% of their scoring from the season before the national tournament to the national title tournament season. And now he's getting most of his offensive talent back this year. And
I'm sure whoever the one writer who gave you guys the first place vote in the preseason poll last year is smiling, seeing what's coming back and how right they were.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Dave will tell you that it was him, and I think he's mentioned that he was the one who said it. We talked about that a little bit last week, but how do you feel about CBS Sports Network and NCHC coming to an agreement to not continue that relationship in the second half of the season?
I think it's hopefully paving the way for some kind of new streaming availability, or some, just some kind of new agreement in general. I know it's not exactly cheap for CBS to send their crews out, every week, and then various capabilities at each venue. There's a lot of logistics to work out there. I would like to see, ESPN or NHL Network even try and do some sort of college spotlight throughout the season in in lieu of CBS Sports Network, or some kind of just overarching streaming service that improves upon what NCHC TV offers.
Can I just say that NCHC is throwing all of these ads out about how it's more games for the same price? It's really not. I mean, at most, each team is getting one extra regular season game on NCHC TV.
Unless they're counting the icebreaker games that ASU is hosting, all those will be on NCHC.
But they would have they would have anyway. So the only time CBS Sports Network games counted is it was 8 games at the second half of the season, and then the playoffs. But the playoff games aren't guaranteed. So because it's
the semis and the
yeah, CBS Sports Network would do the semis and the finals because they were at the XL Energy Center and you didn't have to go to different locations. So you're getting, if you pay for the entire conference, and I don't remember if the postseason was included, but you would get all of your home games, your away games, if they were on NCHC TV, the first round of the playoffs, and then you would have to switch to CBS Sports Network for the semis and the finals. But if you're not in the semis and the finals, you're not getting the benefit of those extra games on your package. If you're the home team, you would hope that if you're a local fan, you're going to those games. And if it was an if it was a regular conference game, you're potentially only getting one of those. Because I think every team was kind of guaranteed to be spotlighted at least once. Not necessarily as the home team, but everyone got like one game on CBS Sports Network.
You had one minimum. I think Denver had like 3 or something like that last year. North Dakota, something.
I think Arizona State hosted 2 and might have appeared in a third one.
Yeah, I think we had 1 on the road and at least 1 at home. It might have been 2.
I think it was 2 because it was the first one of the season with North Dakota at ASU, yep. And then at the end of the year, Western at ASU, the game where you guys won in regulation. I think that was a CBS Sports Network game.
Oh no, we had Denver at ASU.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yep. Yeah. So North Dakota and Denver, and that was it. We were not in one on the road.
So, I mean, again, I think they're just kind of pushing it to push it because they're hoping people don't. It really benefits those who have the conference package or like watch all of the conference games, like us, or the super into it fan. But the casual fan is the one who loses the most, and really the conference itself, I think, is the biggest victim of circumstance here, in that you don't have a conference that consistently competes for a national championship is not getting a nationally televised game in the second half of the season.
I think, to my point that I brought up a couple of weeks ago, it's and even with Paul and on Twitter, it not everybody has CBS Sports Network.
Oh yeah,
I didn't have it until I got YouTube TV, and then when I switched from CenturyLink to Xfinity, I lost NHL Network. So, kind of to your point, Tom, I think it has to be an overarching streaming platform that features this in order to get the benefit, because I understand there's people that you'd be flipping through channels and it's like, oh, hey, a college hockey game, that they can get it. But CBS Sports Network is such a small market compared to the rest of what everybody gets normally. You need to have a deal with ESPN, hell, Amazon, Netflix, something like this, where it's like, hey, you log into Amazon with like Thursday Night Football, that's the first thing that you see. Friday night NCHC hockey, people are going to log in to watch something. Oh, well, we'll check this out, or whatever. I don't think there was a whole lot lost to the casual fan, because CBS Sports Network was not like an ESPN2 or an ESPNU or even NBC Sports Network when that was a thing. I don't think the conference loses a whole lot off of that. They lose some, but it's not a ton.
We lose Dave Starman.
That's the main thing, and ESPN already fucked that one up royally. So there's that.
I mean, I don't necessarily see ESPN going all in on getting games for every conference because they already have the rights to the tournament. They have ECAC and they have Hockey East. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for them financially to try and get streaming access to all the games across college hockey every weekend, but I could see something maybe in the works that is NCAA driven, hopefully, that can help consolidate, maybe bring in ESPN as part of the platform, bring in whoever's going to, bring in Midco for CCHA, bring in Flow, whoever's carrying the Atlantic hockey games, bring in whoever's bring in NCHC.TV, consolidate it all under one umbrella. If I've got to pay $30 a month to get it all, $40 a month, I'll do it. If I can watch all the all those games whenever any given weekend, absolutely.
I don't even think the arguments that everything needs to be under one roof for all things. I think it's really just asking for a weekly spotlight of at least one game. That's what we're losing. We're losing that national coverage of one game a week for the second, when it matters the most in the second half of the conference season, when you have a potential to see Western and Denver square off. I don't even think they played the second half of the year. I think they played one series, and it was at the end of December outside of the playoffs. But even that playoff game is not on TV now. That playoff series is you're going to have to be in the building or watching NCHC TV to see that playoff series. So I think that's what they're losing. They're losing that one game a week where there's the potential to bring in someone who, even if it's a smaller pool to pull from, it's still a pool of potentially a random fan who sees, maybe they're in Minnesota and they happen to know that Zeev Buium was the 6th overall pick of the draft or whatever, and he's playing in tonight's game on Friday, and you're like, oh, all right, I'll check this out for whatever, because that dude's going to potentially be at Minnesota at the end of the year. Or you're a Flyers fan and Alex Bump is playing. So you're like, all right, well, I know that they have at least one prospect from our team. Let's see what he looks like in the college ranks before he gets here. Now that there's not even that, like, you have to be subscribed to NCHC TV if you want to see the conference games, or you have to hope that the conference has to hope that if they're in a non-conference game, it's covered by somebody else, like ESPN, Flow TV, whatever Hockey East uses, and somebody stumbles upon it and they go, oh, so that's the team that won the national title last year. How can I watch them play again? Oh, I have to go subscribe to that conference's streaming service. Okay, I guess I can do that. Or maybe I'll wait and see if they're playing another team and watch them on ESPN the next time they're on.
And I think a big thing is hockey almost runs into the same buzzsaw that baseball does, because these kids are drafted so young that it's very rare that you're going to get like a Mike Trout, a Bryce Harper, Connor McDavid, a Jack Eichel, that they're going to be super hyped up, where they're drafted so young, they're going to spend more than likely a couple years in the minors, a couple years in college, unless they are a Cale Makar. 1 year in college, you hype them up, boom, end of the season, he's playing for the Avalanche in their playoff push.
Macklin Celerini, drafted straight from BU and goes right to the Sharks.
Yeah, but they don't market that, and you need to push these kids younger to draw the attention, because if you don't have the attention of the public, then these streaming services aren't going to pick up and want to do a national game of the week.
Yeah.
To say, hey, check out these guys, check out these guys. And so it falls under a whole umbrella, because if I didn't follow this and I don't even follow it that closely, but as closely as I do, I'm like, oh, he was a third round pick of the Predators. Okay, what's that going to do? I'm not going to see him for 5 years. I can pay attention, but why do I give a shit?
I guess
so that's the problem.
I guess here's the thing, though, is ESPN has put themselves in a position that they can either grow the college hockey product, or they can basically tell everybody that they don't give a shit about it, and they never did, and everything that they've done to cover it, including the postseason, is second tier at best, and they do it just because it's there and they can throw money at it. The way they covered the kid who's going to Penn State, if they don't cover that kid throughout the entire season, you've shit the opportunity you had to make that kid a superstar in college and earn the NIL money that somebody is paying him. Two, you like I just said, you've proven the point that you really don't care about college hockey, and it's a third tier sport to you at best, and everyone wants to talk about growing the game and growing the sport, but no one wants to step up and actually do it. So why are and the worldwide leader in sports would have shat the bed when they've made the bed in a pristine way that they can show it off as a 5-star hotel.
They care more about cricket.
Right.
Well, and that leads right into a point that I was going to make, that if ESPN's not sending a crew to Mullet Arena on October 3rd to cover his debut, then what are you even doing?
Oh yeah, 100%.
And you look at their highlights, they basically never show hockey. They've cut down their hockey presence, which it made no sense to me why they even got the rights to NHL. But they cut down their hockey presence so much. But it's also incumbent on the NHL to say, hey, these are these kids that we think are going to be superstars. We need to market them and go to ESPN, who, yeah, they just took their money, but it's like, let's make the best use of this. And then, again, Bettman talks about growing the game. Well, if you're not going to take this opportunity, then you can suck a Bucky's left nut. Like, it's right there. It's easy to do. Make the investment, because then you're going to make more money, because guess what? All these states that don't have hockey, you watch anything on YouTube of people seeing hockey for the first time, they're like, this game is insane. This is awesome. I need to go. Show that off and show off these young, talented players that have the ability to grow the game.
And you really have to humanize them. I mean, that's kind of the one downside of hockey, is it's so expensive to play that everyone looks at them like, oh, why should I care about this? It's a bunch of rich kids who've been affluent their whole life, and now they're getting even more money to do this thing that someone has paid for, or this, that, and the other is one argument against it. But then, okay, cool, tell the story of the kid. Tell the story of how he was skating at 2.5, 3 years old, how he dreamt of going to North Dakota his entire career, or his entire high school career in the USHL, and it was the one school he wanted to go to, but they didn't even look at him. So he goes and plays 2 years at Tennessee State, or whatever the hell was supposed to get a program this year and ended up not doing it. Okay, he plays 2 years at LIU, at Long Island University, and then finally, he has a good enough seasons and enters the transfer portal because someone's cousin told someone's best friend, who told their ex mother-in-law, that North Dakota really wants him to come now that he's had 2 good years at LIU, and opening night he's going to play against his old school. Like, sell those stories and tell people, like, give those stories to the people and cover them if you wanted to make them actually human, and for us to care about them, and not promote the fact that their families doing well and they don't even need the scholarship, but they get it because schools have to give scholarships to somebody.
Or like Ethan would be a perfect example. He started in
Yeah.
roller hockey. Jason Zucker is kind of the same thing. It's not the, I don't know Austin Matthews' family or whatever, but they go, oh, these guys are from Arizona. Well, if you started actually skating, you're probably from a pretty well-off family that you can afford to drive and get the ice time. They're like, oh, the game's growing. No, share these stories. You can start in roller hockey. It's, I'm guessing, less expensive because you don't have to pay for ice time. You can get.
There's been some great roller hockey players too that have made the NHL. Pat Maroon, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, played a ton of roller hockey. Ethan Frank played a ton of roller hockey.
Jason Zucker played
a ton of roller hockey. There's guys who in the offseason will go sign up for a roller hockey tournament to skate and not do other things because they just want to play more hockey. And Arizona State had like a great story that they kind of messed up a little bit with, but you had, Shane Doan's son, who is kind of supposed to be like the hometown hero. His dad played in the NHL squad that was there, and they kind of hoped he was going to revitalize the Coyotes when they pulled him out of Arizona State maybe a little too early. And now he's with, is he still with that organization? So he would be in Utah now?
Yep, he's still in Utah.
Yeah.
Actually, no, he got traded to Buffalo this offseason.
Okay.
Yeah, he did.
But so, I mean, like, that would have been one of the stories that you ride, like this hometown kid who played for his hometown university and ended up playing in the same arena as the NHL team because the NHL team couldn't get their shit together to have their own arena.
I could go off onto a whole thesis about that, but no, I don't think we have enough time.
We have as much time as we want to take. I don't even,
Well, one point I did want to make about it, if anybody from ESPN is watching this now or later on, Friday, October 3rd, there are 5 games on the college football schedule. 2 of those are on the ESPN networks. Charlotte at South Florida is on ESPN2 at 7 Eastern. West Virginia at BYU is 10:30 Eastern on the main flagship network. Why not send a crew to Tempe and air it on ESPNU starting at 10 o'clock East Coast time, and get the game on national TV. You made the effort to broadcast Gavin McKenna's commitment, something I've never seen done for any college hockey commit. And that's, you can't just leave it at that and let it just be like, okay, let's hope this takes a life of its own. No, like, follow through and take the next steps and promote the who could be the next next big thing in college hockey, but grow the game.
Yeah. And I mean, you pick the stars to spotlight, and the light's still gonna shine on other kids. Like, just because you're there for Gavin doesn't mean that someone else isn't gonna draw eyes when they're playing. Like, that's why you do these spotlight games and these showcase games. Is you never know who's watching, who's gonna catch somebody's eye, who's gonna be a kid who earns an undrafted contract at the end of the year. And it's
and that's even with high school. When I did a few games, there's a tournament kind of around Thanksgiving. It's Edina, Eden Prairie, Grand Rapids, and Elk River. Casey Middlestad was playing for Eden Prairie. Best high school hockey player I've ever seen, and I'd watched Matt Niskanen, who was previously the best high school player I had ever seen. But Micah Miller, who seemed like 87 years at St. Cloud State, he stood out to me. Zach Stayskal was a really young goalie at the time. He played really well. There were all these the Perbix kids from Elk River. They were outstanding. I was seeing all these good players, and yeah, I was technically there to help a dude cover Grand Rapids, focused on Casey Middlestad, but you're seeing all these other great players, and the attention in Braemar Arena it was sold out for all those games, and people are getting to see all these other kids, even if they're just there for one particular player.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's the spotlights. They're awesome for that.
Yeah, because like I said, the point that I made earlier when we were talking about goaltenders, they're the only player on there for 60 minutes. Doesn't mean they're under pressure for 60 minutes, but that superstar you're there to look at, he's on the ice for what, 45 seconds at a time? Maybe a minute 15 if he's really like stuck in the defensive zone and they can't get a whistle, or the offense is really pressing and they're just trying to get guys off one at a time to keep offensive pressure up. Like 45 seconds at a time. So that means 45 seconds later, there's another kid on the ice that could catch your eye. 45 seconds after that could be another kid. And if you're running 3-4 lines, like it could be 3-4 minutes in between shifts. And then to go back out and get your 45 seconds and then right back in, in the merry-go-round.
My favorite story is still, I don't remember what round he got drafted in, but there was a kid from her rival school who had scouts looking at him. And we kind of looked back and we're like, oh, they're Montreal scouts. So we just started talking mad shit about him. They ended up moving, but in that game, he had a wide open breakaway and he was supposed to be, top of the top. Our goalie just absolutely stoned him. And what we heard later was the goalie goes, how are you going to score on D1 goalies if you can't even score on D?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's brilliant. But he, his name was PJ. He could have gotten a look from those scouts just with how he played in that game because they were there to watch the other kid.
And I mean, everyone who plays against Penn State this year is gonna go after that kid. They're gonna play him tough. They're gonna play him hard. They're gonna want to be like, oh, you think he's the next number one pick? You haven't seen what I can do yet. Or they're gonna up their game because they know scouts are gonna be at every game. They know that coverage, to some degree, there's going to be coverage of every game, whether it's paper or local coverage, maybe not national coverage, which it should be if you're going to take that much effort into the kid. What I would look for Penn State to kind of be that team that has the target on their back and has to play a tougher brand of hockey than they've ever had to play, partly because of what ESPN did to them and partly because they've got who's projected to be the number one overall pick.
Oh, absolutely, they will be.
So
plus you've also got Guy Gadowski is going to be the head coach for the Spengler Cup as well.
So yeah, a lot of pressure in Happy Valley, but we're just a couple more weeks, and then we get to see how this thing all shakes out. I'm excited for it. I think everyone is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be a great season. Can't wait for it to start.
One other thing I was just thinking about with those players, what was that Frozen for a few years ago? It was Ferris, Union, Minnesota, and then I can't remember the fourth team, but it was between Ferris State and Union. They had, I think, one draft pick, and they're playing in the Frozen Four, and it's like, oh, all the attention is on us. I don't know what happened to those other kids, but it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it was 2012 you're thinking of, because I remember Ferris ended up getting to the championship against BC, and then just
that's who BC was the other one. I couldn't remember the fourth team.
Fun fact: Western knocked that Ferris State team out of the CCHA conference tournament. They won the conference tournament that year. Their second conference tournament program history. So, fun fact there. They knocked him out in the first round.
There we go.
Good for you.
I was at those games. It was very fun. We're at just over an hour. I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you, Tom, for joining us on short notice. I think I reached out at like 5 o'clock my time and I was like, hey, you want to come do this thing and chat with us since we're getting close and you've heard some things about Cole Spicer. So here's really the big news that we had. And again, it's nice to have him in Kalamazoo. Hope he does well and has some personal success and brings some more team success to a team that has only gotten better the last few years. So I'm excited.
Thank you for having me on, and hopefully he does well against everybody except for ASU.
Yeah, see? And we were all tied to him. So.
Sorry, Mike. He can do well against Duluth.
And at least he played for us.
Ooh, that's true.
You got me there.
Because what was it? Well, I was actually running through teams like, oh, I guess Western only really needs like 2 or 3 more kids to transfer in to have all of the schools covered, except in transfers from everybody. But I don't know if I can really count ASU. I don't think he technically suited up for the Sun Devils. So
yeah, he was listed on our start of summer roster video, but then then obviously it just deteriorated from there.
So yep. Hopefully, God willing, we will be on a weekly schedule again going forward. But life happens and things come up. There shouldn't be any more fantasy football drafts to distract some people. There could be a terrible 2-year-old who distracts me from time to time. So,
well, that's not a good excuse.
I think that's a wonderful excuse because 2-year-olds are terrorists. I don't think we really have anything else. Oh, there's the YouTube stuff, but that's everyone's capable of making decisions. There's a like button, a dislike button. Choose whichever one you wish to choose and click on it if you want to. There's a comment section. You can tell us how dumb my big fat head looks or how silly Michael's voice sounds, or you could tell us, yeah, or you could say that, hey, you like the show and we're not complete morons. But so yeah, you could do that if you want to. Follow us on the socials. They've been scrolling down there for a while, or you've heard them enough that hopefully you know them, and if you've heard them and haven't clicked on them, well, that's cool too. It's a decision you've made. Outside of that, I think there's only one thing left to say, and that's pucks on net. Good things happen, like goal horns and fight songs. Getting close to the regular season. Hopefully we're back to a weekly schedule. But we may not be, so I don't know. Bye.